Hey everybody, this is just a spur of the moment, little quick video about what we did in class today. So I'm just going to go over the notes that I've attached to the link that's in this material section. So I'm going to start with, this is really, for my virtual kids and for my kids who are absent. If you have already been in class, you really don't have to watch this video because I'm just going over the same things. But if you're a virtual kid or if you were absent today, this is kind of for you, okay? So we start out with patroons, okay, and patrooning. So we talked about that in class today. Patrooning, and we talked about it a little bit yesterday too, but patrooning was where the Dutch decided they wanted to give people land if those people could bring over 50 plus settlers to work the land. So they said, okay, if you can bring 50 plus settlers, we will give you this amount of land, and you just have to have the 50 people to work the land, and that's how that worked. So patrooning was encouraged by the Dutch. They said, okay, well, we want a lot of people to try to patroon because if they can, or try to become a patroon, if they can, then that will grow our colony, and then our colony will really thrive, right? And the bigger the colony, the better. The bigger the colony, the more power you have as a empire that's trying to spread to new nations. So people would come from all over to be like these 50, or they would just come over even if they didn't get to be a patroon, or if they didn't get the head right. Remember that from the Jamestown, that they're kind of the similar, the same thing. So, or you would just come because you were a religious or political refugee. And a refugee is somebody, it's essentially somebody who's trying to get out of a bad situation in their home country. I know, like right now, we have several Sudanese refugees because the state of life in the Sudan, I know, is a little bit hard. So there's a lot of Sudanese refugees, especially here in Nashville. We've gotten a lot of those, and they're a blessing to have because they're geniuses. But anyways, that's just an example of a refugee, right? So you would have them come from Germany, Scandinavia, France, Scotland, Ireland, Italy, England, Croatia. And then you would have a bunch of religions too to come. So like religions are the way people believed. You would have Mennonites, and I think it may be spelled wrong on your notes. It's Mennonites, so Mennonites. And then you would have Quakers, which we're fixing to talk about those. The Lutheran, that's a branch of Christianity. Roman Catholic, Jewish, and Puritan people would all come too. This could be why New York is so diverse now, because the New Netherland and New Netherland was the same, okay? So New Netherland is what the Dutch called it, and the Dutch owned it at the time. That was what was in the New World, okay? And it later became New York. So what happened actually was the English, you know how the English were super greedy when it came to Spain? Spain was really expanding into the New World back whenever there was conquistadors. Y'all remember we talked about that? And so England saw that, and they were like, oh, we really want to go over, like, we really want that power. So they went over and they made their own thing whenever they realized Spain was kind of getting ahead of them. Well, it's kind of the same thing here. They realized that the Dutch had created the New Netherlands, which was a humongous colony at the time, and it was really gaining some ground. The biggest city in New Netherland was New Amsterdam, and that's actually where New York is right now. New Amsterdam, and it was growing so big that the English just really wanted it. So the English actually, they threatened an attack on the Dutch, which was New Netherland, or New Nederland, however you want to say it. And so the Dutch governor that was the leader of the New Netherland colony was like, oh goodness, we've got to get out of here because we don't stand a chance against the English. And that's kind of what they did. They just surrendered. So the Dutch governor, he actually surrenders to the English, and the English come in and take over at this point. So King Charles, the King of England at the time, he essentially gets this colony, and it's under English rule. He actually gives the colony to his brother. His brother is the Duke of York, okay? So the Duke of York changes the name of New Netherland from New Netherland to New York, okay? And in 1664, New York had a population of 8,000 residents. 19 years later, it was already the biggest colony at that point, but 19 years later, New York rises in population all the way to 12,000 residents. And the colony was kind of growing too big. So what the Duke of York decided to do was to divide the colony. And so he actually gave the extra parts that he didn't want to keep. He gave those to two people. He gave them to Lord John Berkeley and Sir George Carteret, and that's probably French, but it's probably not pronounced Carteret, but Sir George Carteret and Lord John Berkeley, he gave this to them, and they kind of became the leaders and the owners of this colony. So just like people own a house now, they kind of essentially own a colony like that back then. In this colony, they got together and they named it New Jersey, and that's what New Jersey is now, okay? So you have New York and New Jersey. They were all one together at one point, and then they split, and now we have New York, which was New Netherland, and New Jersey, which was part of New York. So these guys own this. Well, these two guys end up actually losing New Jersey because they couldn't really afford to keep it up. And so it actually became part of the royal colonies now. So England owns it again. So it just kind of went full circle. So New Jersey and New York actually both became like a haven for ethnic groups. And ethnic is a vocabulary word. You need to know that. Ethnic is any nationality, essentially. It's different racial, religious, and national backgrounds. So that's what you need to know, okay, about that. Then in 1702, New Jersey became a royally owned colony. Okay, and that's what I just said. So it just became a royally owned colony. These two guys, Sir George Carteret and Lord John Berkeley, did not have control of this colony anymore, and it was now an English colony. So now we're done talking about those two. So now we're going to move on to Pennsylvania and Delaware, okay? So this is where we see the introduction, really, of Quakers, like Quaker Oats. So I know y'all probably had Quaker Oats, whether it had been oatmeal or whether it was oatmeal cookies. I know my mom makes those all the time, especially around the holidays. Oatmeal cookies. So you probably had Quaker Oats before. Quakers are a Protestant group of Christians from Europe, somewhere in Europe, mostly England, who were escaping persecution just like the Puritans were. Okay, so the Puritans were trying to escape persecution, which means to mistreat because of your beliefs. They were escaping the persecution in England to come over to the New World. So they were very similar to Puritans. They were also considered pilgrims because they were on a religious journey. So Quakers came over. William Penn, he's in your notes right there. William Penn, Pennsylvania is actually named after him because he came over and he started Pennsylvania. And let me go to this next notes. Now we're on the last page of the notes. And William Penn, he was a very wealthy English Quaker. So it actually happened that King Charles, the King of England at the time, owed money to William Penn's father. And to pay off his debt, King Charles gave land to Penn's father. They actually called it Penn's Wood at first. Penn's Woods. So in your notes, it needs to just be Penn's Woods. So PENN''S and then capital WOODS. So Penn's Woods. And that's what they called it at first, and then eventually they changed the name to Pennsylvania, and that's still named after William Penn. So he was a very wealthy Quaker, and that is why you see a lot of Quakers, and still even to this day, they went a lot to Pennsylvania and Delaware. But that's really all I have for you guys today. That's what I really hit in class. I know it seems so much shorter on video because I can just straight out talk to you and give it to you. So yeah, that's it. Just make sure you study those notes. There will be no illustrated notes this week. I'm just doing participation grades, and make sure you watch this video and look over these notes, and I can see that, especially from our virtual kids. I can see if you've done it. So I'm going to do that as a participation grade. So I'm not doing any illustrated notes or anything like that. Just make sure you take these notes, you write them down. Don't just take them and copy them. I want you to write them down in your notes that you already have so that you have them. Okay? All right, guys. Well, I will see you later. Email me with any questions, jenna.graves@sumnerschools.org. Bye. Have a good day.